Hey guys, this is Natalie with Treasures of Mini, and this is the really cute shaker card that we're going to be making today with the last collection in the June Flavor of the Month card kit. So we're going to be using the So Jelly stamp set by Lawn Fawn, as well as a few of the elements from the Mermaid for You stamp set by Lawn Fawn. So what I've went ahead and done is on a piece of thin cardstock. It's not as thin as regular paper. I think it's about 65-pound weight. I stamped out the different elements that I want from both stamp sets with some Tuxedo Black Memento ink. And with my Prismacolor pencils, I am going to color each of the little elements. But for time's sake, I'm only going to let you watch me color one of the jellyfish and one of the starfish. And I'm going to show you how I add some color and detail to the little coral and the grass. So down at the bottom, I have the numbers on the Prisma colored pencils that I used, and they are in order that I use them in. So I started out coloring the entire jellyfish with the lightest color, and then I just work my way out from lightest to darkest. And each time I put down a little less color. And then when I'm at my darkest, I work my way back into my lightest color. And when I get to this lightest color, I decided that I needed a little bit more contrast. So I went back and used the two darkest a little bit more. And then I covered the entire area with the lightest one. Now for my jellyfish, I actually chose 5 different colored pencils. And again, I have those on the bottom numbered from my lightest to my darkest, except for the very last one is a yellow, and I wait till the very end to do that. Now, in my mind, on this starfish, these center corners that I'm doing, I'm only darkening those because it's going to help the starfish show depth. So it should be darker in these corners. So I'm going to, again, work from my lightest to my darkest, and each time I'm putting it down a little bit less color. And this is the darkest, and I'm only going to do it kind of right there in the corners. And then I'm going to work my way out. And I'm decided that I didn't lay down enough color with each one, so I am going to add a little bit more each time until I get to the lightest color, which is the one that I started with. And when I get to that one, I am going to just color the entire starfish. Using this lightest color over all of the colors actually helps it blend a little more, but I also wanted it to have a little bit of a yellow tint, and that's where I took this yellow and I just colored it over the entire area. Now, for these coral pieces and the seaweed over there, I stamped those in Distress Oxide inks, and I wanted to add some dimension. So with my Prismacolor pencils, I went in and added some shading, and then I've come back in with a color that pretty much matches the Distress Oxide and blended that out. And then with this very light color, you can't really see it that well here on the video, but it adds a little bit of a highlight. So I also did that with the grass. So now I want to make some pieces that are kind of look like waves. And I do not have a wave die. If you do, you could definitely use it. But I thought I would show you a neat way to use your circle punches to make waves. So on a piece of blue vellum, I am just randomly using the edge of my circle punch to make little waves. And some of them I cut off tiny little bits, and some of them I go in further. Now this is just a piece of regular like typing paper that happens to be colored. I'm going to use this one as a stencil for our background. So as you can see, sometimes I cut off little bits and sometimes I cut off bigger pieces. There's no perfect way to do this. Just scatter them out. So you can see I did the typing paper, the dark blue, and a lighter colored cardstock and our vellum. So we're going to make this a shaker card. So I'm going to show you here. I used my mat to line up 2 of my dies, and then with some washi tape, I taped them together. Now by using my mat like that, I was able to line it up perfectly, and by taping it together, I was able to cut the frame out 8 times to where they'll all line up just right. So here are the 8 frames that I cut out of some scrap cardstock. This is the frame that we're going to actually use for the front of our card, so I cut it out as well. And then I cut out a piece of acetate with the biggest of the frames. So I took the tape off when I got to this part and just used the bigger one. And I also used it again to cut out a piece of glossy photo paper. And now I want to start layering those together. So I had already glued together 2 of the frames, and now I'm going to take this piece. It's one of the waves that we made. I cut it down to fit, and with some Tombow, I'm going to glue it down. And then I'm going to stack 3 more frames on top of that. And I'm using Tombow Mono Multi-Glue to glue these down. So I did 2, and then I glued down our wave, and then I'm doing 3 more. And then I'm going to glue down our vellum wave on this one. And I cut it down to where you would be able to see the other wave behind it too. So they're kind of like stacked. Once I get that glued down, I'm going to glue down 1 more of the frames, and I'm going to stop there because the other frame I have is our decorative one, and I don't want to glue that decorative one on here just yet. So now I'm going to set that aside and going to look at our piece of acetate. I want to take my scissors and I want to trim this acetate down some. I want to trim these little dots that came from the die. And then I'm going to take our decorative piece and put some double-sided sticky tape all the way around it. I'm going to peel that backing off, and I'm going to lay the acetate very carefully over it. So if we were going to put it together, it would go over the top just like that. But I don't really want this white showing. It's going to stick out too much. So I took one of my Copic markers and just went around the inside edge. And now, since I'm going to do some stamping, I kind of want to have a guideline of what the frame's going to cover up and what the waves are going to cover up, so that when I stamp, I'm going to be stamping inside these areas. So now, with this perfect medium stamp pad that I've never used, I thought we would experiment and see what it does. So I'm going to stamp the little school of fish from the Mermaid for You stamp set. And then I'm going to go back in with the little jellyfish from the So Jelly, and I'm going to stamp it a couple of times too. I don't really know if this is going to show up. I'm just testing it out. Once I have that done, I want to start making my little waves. So with cracked pistachio, broken china, and faded blue jeans, I am going to alternate between them, moving my stencil around so that it's not always the same, and using different widths. I'm going to work my way down the photo paper. And as I start working down, you can sort of see right here, like where I stamped a couple of those little bubbles. So it may come out good, I'm not sure. I want it to be darker the closer we get to the bottom, so I will use less and less of that cracked pistachio. But I'm just going to keep working my way down and making sure I move it. This is the piece. But before I wipe it off, I decided I wanted to stamp some seaweed in the peeled paint. And because I used my silver jelly roll pen to mark where the waves are, I'm able to line it up just right. And after I do that, I'm going to take some iced spruce. And just in case the little schools of fish didn't show up that well, I'm going to stamp a couple of more of those. And I'm also going to stamp a few of the little bubbles with some of the faded blue jeans. Now, before we wipe this off with a baby wipe, you want to make sure that it's good and dry. And then with a damp baby wipe, we're going to wipe off that top layer. And you can see here how pretty and shiny it turns out. I love this technique. I'm calling it Photo Oxide technique. I discovered this by accident. You can kind of see where we had stamped the little fish with the perfect medium. But also using one of my other little tips, I like to put a little bit of Tombow on the back of the elements that I'm going to stack on a card, and I let that dry. When it's dry, you can use it and it's removable. So you can see here, I just put down, I'm kind of sort of putting my card together and taking all of my elements that I've colored, and I'm trying to arrange them. But because I used that Tombow trick, I can move these as I want to, and when I have it the way I think I want it, then I can actually start gluing everything down. So this is the way I think I want it. So I'm going to pick up my frame, and I'm going to pick up our Oxide background as well. And with some Tombow Mono, I am going to cover the back of it, and I'm going to glue it to our card base, which is just a standard A2 size card. So before I keep going, I decided I needed those little school of fish to show up even more. So with some Memento black ink, I took off my little my little jellyfish, so I could stamp behind them. And I stamped some of the schools of fish, and I also came in and stamped some more little bubbles with the faded blue jeans. Now with the foam squares, I am going to pop up our little jellyfish, but I'm going to lay my frame here so that I make sure I get it in the right position according to how it's going to be when it's put together. So I did that for both of the jellyfish, and now I can take the frame off and I can start gluing down the other elements. And I'm not popping them up, I'm gluing them straight down with some Tombow, because when we get out our frame piece, those will be layered. So these can be flat. I just used a pen to kind of mark where these two elements go so that I can make sure I get them back in the exact spot. So once I have those glued down, I'm going to get the frame out, and I'm going to permanently glue down the other of the little seaweed and the other little elements onto the different layers of waves. And then I'm going to put glue all over the back of my frame, and I'm going to glue it to the front of our card. Now I'm just going to lay the acetate piece over top to see what it looks like, and I realized that I did not save room for a sentiment. So I got the idea to punch out a circle and then cut it into a corner so it would fit on the top corner, and with some evergreen bough, I'm just going to edge around that piece and set it aside. Now with the pattern paper, I cut out some of these little tiny shells, and I'm going to, with some Tombow, I'm going to glue them just kind of in some of these blank areas at the bottom of the card. I did take my silver jelly roll pen and add a few little details onto those to kind of help them pop out. And then I also took a clear jelly roll glaze and I went over them to give them a little bit more depth. And with a Wink of Stella, I'm going over my jellyfish. And with a black jelly roll, I'm going to redo all of the eyes and mouths to make them pop out just a little bit more. Now it's time to start filling up the inside. So this is the sequins that came with the card kit. I'm going to dump them out next to my card right here, because when I do shaker cards, I like to glue some of the sequins actually on the back of the card. So when the card is setting up, they don't all go to the bottom. You still have some prettiness throughout the card. So with my glossy accents, I glued them down, and I also did some clear drops with my glossy accents as well. And once that had dried, I start adding the sequins to the inside. But I also am taking from my own stash some of these little micro beads and little glitter pieces and just filling it up with all kinds of pretty. And with that same double-sided sticky tape, I'm going to go around the edge of my frame and peel off the backs. But because my acetate did not go all the way to the edge of my piece of paper, which I wanted that way on purpose, I'm going to take some Tombow and go around that outer edge. It helps it hold it just a little bit better. And then we're going to place our frame very carefully to line it up over the top of our card. Then I'm going to take some Tombow and I'm going to put some glue in just the corner part of our sentiment, and I'm going to put it up here in the top corner of the card. Now this card kit came with like some enamel stickers, so I've decided to put those on the card. I'm going to use the little fish up here by my sentiment, and it came with an adorable little crab that I just had to find a place to put him, so I'm going to put him down here at the bottom. And this little tiny baby turtle was actually a turtle that was on the patterned paper, but I fussy cut it out and I just dropped it right there. That's not where I wanted it to go, but because I dropped it, we just went with it. And I'm going to cover it with glossy accents, and it makes it look more like one of those enamel stickers. So I thought that it needed one more thing, so I got some little rhinestones out from my stash and I put 3 of them up top here to look like the little bubbles from the fish. So that is the last card from the Flavor of the Month June card kit. Remember, that card kit comes with 4 collections, and we did 4 videos. Please give me a thumbs up and hit subscribe if you're not already. You can find me on Facebook at Treasures of Minnie Craft Corner and Instagram at Treasures of Minnie as well. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave me your comments. I love reading them. At the end of the video, you can click on my face to go to my channel, or you can click on the next video. Either way, until next time, hugs and loves from my craft room to yours. Bye.